Hey,
Oh, wait. Say something again?
hey, can you hear me?
Wait, did you say something?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Perfect. Am I good to go?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, sweet. Um, Thanks for letting me present again. I think the
Or
last time I did this was like late last year. It's kind of all blurring together for me.
I think it
But I'm
was
here.
fall.
It was just after Plinko.
It was right
Yeah,
after Plinko. That
yeah, it was
makes
fall last
sense.
year.
Yeah, so I just wanted to go over a bit more like red team and blue team stuff. If you have any questions, please just speak up. I'm gonna try my best to like demo as much as I can in Windows as I go on. I'm not super great at Linux, honestly. So, but I think that the concepts will apply to everything.
Yep.
So, starting with some blue team stuff, when you're trying to defend a network, at least in the in the context of CCDC, really at a high level, you want to first start by really understanding your network and the critical services. And the critical services are usually what's scored, in the scoring packet. Um, and an important part of that is identifying dependencies between services. After you understand your network and your critical service, you really want to lock down every single system, which is a lot easier said than done, without breaking anything, which is also a lot easier said than done. Um, and the way I think you should go about this is really understanding the threat model of each system, reducing its attack surface, and then actually securing whatever is left after you've reduced the attack surface as much as possible. And then after you've accomplished that, then you get to just chill, monitor for new attacks, put out any fires, and threat hunt. So that's just kind of like a high level overview. I'm going to go through all this right now. So when you're actually first, I think a really effective way to really understand your network, your critical services, and identify dependencies and kind of get your attack surface is with network scanning tools. So switching over to the demo, and please let me know if the font is too small. And I think I showed this off last time too, but
Yep.
it's just a really cool tool, super great to use, ZenMap. Um, what ZenMap does is perform a port scan. So I have like a Windows server running and perform a port scan. It takes like 3 seconds and it shows me what's running on the system. Um, it even like does it in this nice table.
No.
I can see that I'm running HTTP, which is probably a web server. I'm running MySQL, which is a database. I'm running VNC, which we'll look at a bit later. And then I've got all these crappy random ports open, um, and MSRPC. So that immediately tells me this is a Windows computer. That and 445, which is SMB. So I learn a lot about the system. I know what's running on it. And if you do this for your entire network, you'll get a lot better of an idea as to what you're dealing with. So So kind of going into what like also trying to identify service interdependencies. So, and this happens in a lot of competitions or and just in the real world too, obviously. Like DNS is super duper important. Domain name services. So I'm sure most people know, but what DNS does is convert host names like google.com into IP addresses, which is what your computer actually uses to, make a like web request or a database request. And if it ever goes down, then anything that needs to talk to something else will also go down. So on the right, for example, I've got a web server on the right and a database on the left. When the web server connects to the database, it actually connects with the -h host name database.com. And every time it does this, it needs to chat with the DNS server to say, hey, like, what is database.com actually mapped to? So DNS going down could take down this connection because it asks DNS what's db.com. It doesn't get a response because DNS is down. Tries to log into the database and it can't even find the database. It doesn't know where it is, so the website goes down. DNS is really annoying too because it is also required for Active Directory to work. So in huge corporate networks and a lot of the time in CCDC. You'll find Active Directory, which is a really good and totally not like horrible and bloated Microsoft service for managing authentication across multiple computers, like a whole company, really. Um, and the way that your computer that is domain joined, so I can log into a domain user, the way it knows who the AD server is also through DNS, which is why Active Directory and DNS is always usually ends up on the same computer. So if DNS goes down, Active Directory authentication also goes down, which could break even more stuff. Another thing that can break down services and like break interdependencies is password rotations. So changing your password is definitely good security, but if I change the password on my database that my web server is logging into, like, and web apps, they just straight up use a username and a password in a text file somewhere to log into databases. I can show that in a bit. So if the password changes, database can't it can't connect to the database anymore and the web server will go down. So there are some cases where changing a password will break your service. So just another reason to really understand interdependencies, which are kind of hard to find until you've broken something. But yeah, so let me hop over to the server that I've got. So on the server, I've got a website running. It's this like crappy bookstore written in PHP. So if I go into the XAMPP control panel and like what I showed on the scan earlier, it's actually running both Apache and MySQL. Apache is the web server and MySQL is the database. So if I go ahead and stop the database and try to load the website, it's just completely broken. Fatal error, uncaught MySQL exception. So in a case like this, you would be losing points because your service is down. I think I can go in and actually, let's see if I can change the MySQL password easily. I can. So let's see. If I go to MySQL, or if I go to user accounts up here, okay, this is really crappy. Let's do it in here. Okay, so it's blocked except for localhost. That's actually pretty good. But if I like go into phpMyAdmin, which is this like web app that comes pre-installed sometimes when you download Apache and MySQL together, you can actually like modify user accounts and stuff in it. But if we go into the actual files of the web server, which is in XAMPP, htdocs, and then there's probably a, let's see. Oh, let's check out the read area. No, there's probably just, it's probably just like in admin.php. Oh, it's probably in database actually. Oh, okay, no. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. www project database functions.php. Okay, so we didn't even make a config file. This is a really crappy website. But if we go to the database functions.php file that he was talking about, and the functions, there we go. So right here is where the credentials for the database is stored. So here it's connecting to localhost because the database is running on this computer, but sometimes you would see this be like database.com if it's connecting to a database on a remote server over what using DNS, using a direct host name. You could also switch it to an IP address to remove that dependency on DNS. And then the username is root and there's no password. So if you change the password to something else, it's going to keep on trying to log in with this. So if you change a password and a website goes down, if you change a database password and the website goes down, you'll need to find which random config file has the password and change it there. So usually it's a little bit better than just embedded in some random PHP code, but this is a particularly bad web app, so which is why I love using it for demonstrations. All right, cool. And yeah, please let me know if you have any questions about any of that. I could also demo changing the password if y'all want to see if y'all want to see how to change a MySQL password.
Yeah, can you do that?
Yeah, okay. Let me give it a shot. So let's see if I actually have the MySQL command line. I don't. Okay. That actually makes this a lot harder. Let's see if I've got it here. Okay. Okay. Yeah, cool. All right. So I've got MySQL. The syntax for using the MySQL command line client is -h for the host. So the host is up here, the IP address of my VM, and then it's the username -u username and -p password. Let's see if the root user lets me log in without a password. Okay, it did. Cool. So that's the other thing, right? If the hackers get to your server and they like get in, they can look in this file and see the password in plain text there and use it themselves, like I just did. So now I'm logged in to MySQL. So MySQL is extremely annoying, actually. Um, it's like it's very like a very verbose like query language, and it's like very particular about like using semicolons and stuff like that. So I'm going to show databases. So the funny thing about MySQL is that the MySQL users are actually stored in the database. So in a database called MySQL. So I think it's use MySQL. So now I'm using the MySQL database. So show tables. Oh, forgot my semicolon. So it's showing all of the tables in the big MySQL database, and one of them is called user. So from user, select. If I do this, it's going to be really bad probably, but this is show me everything in that table. Oh, from user. This is where Google is really good.
I think it's select all from user.
Select all from user. Yeah, you're probably right.
Oh, well, with
Or
the
select star from user.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's disgusting because there's so much stuff in here. But at the top, it actually gives me the variables that I care about, or like the headers of the columns in the table. So I care about user, host, user, and password. So select host, user, password from user. All right, so this is a lot simpler. So the way MySQL users work is that they are scoped to hosts. They have a host and a username. So you can see these are the hosts on the left and then the username. So the root user, sorry, so this percentage means anywhere. So if I log in from this server itself, right, I'm logging in from 127.0.0.1. So if I log in from the server itself, I become this user or this user. That's the loopback for IPv6. But if I log in from my personal computer, which I actually am logged in from, I'll log in from this user instead because it's the percentage host, which means from anywhere. So this allows you to do stuff like scope the root user to only the local system, which is a great way to harden a server. Um, or like make it so there's two users, one for the local and one for the remote, and the remote user has less privileges. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with it. So we can see here that the password field is completely blank for all of them. So yeah, clearly none of them have passwords right now. So I guess I can try to change the password. MySQL change user password. It's pretty gross depending on, yeah, it's alter user now.
Oh
So here we
yeah.
go. So it's username at host. So we'll say root at, so we have to change it for all of the hosts. So I'll start with that one, identified by, let's just set it to 123. That worked. Let's copy that and do it again, this time for percent. And then let's do it one more time, but for 127.0.0.1. All right, now if I look at the users, wow, okay. Now if I do this one again, select host user password from user. So now they actually all have passwords. And the password's actually, I think it's like an MD5 hash or something, or it's like a salted MD5 hash.
Okay.
It depends on what version of MySQL you're using. So even if I, as a hacker, get into your MySQL server and list your passwords, I actually don't see them in clear text. I can make the educated guess though, because all the hashes are the same, that they all have the same password.
What is a
Um,
salted hash?
yeah, that's a hard question.
Hmm?
Um,
Uh,
so like a hash is basically just like running a function on some data,
yeah.
and this function is like specifically made to have unique outputs for each input. Um, when it's salted, that means a special secret value is added to the data before it goes into the function.
Hmm.
And why this is used in security a lot is because um, if I knew what hashing algorithm was used here, I could just start hashing random stuff with that algorithm to try and like find a match, and then I figured out your password. But if there's a salt in the hash, then I also need to know what the salt is in order to figure out what your password is. So it's like an extra layer of security on just normal hashing.
Okay.
I think you can also pepper a hash, which now we're just going off into like,
I've never heard of pepper.
yeah, it's like you generate a random value for each individual hash and store it in the database next to it. So
Oh,
if we were peppering the hashes, then each of these hashes would be different, even though
yeah.
they are the same password. Yeah.
Okay.
All
Okay,
right,
that's great.
cool. So we changed the MySQL password. Let's see if the bookstore works. It's broken, and the answer is access denied for user root at localhost using password no. So the reason why it's broken is we changed the password to 123.
Okay.
Alrighty. All right. So kind of going back to like locking down a system, I think one of the most important things to do when locking down a server in CCDC or just, trying to do cybersecurity in the real world is understanding your threat model. And that's basically the idea that in order to say a system is secure, you have to have a complete understanding of what attacks are possible on the system and what countermeasures exist to stop those attacks. And in order to understand what attacks are possible on the system, you have to understand what the attack surface of the system is, like what parts of the system can be attacked. Um, and on a Windows computer, easily, or on most servers, the easiest way to do that is to scan it and just see what external attack surface exists, what ports are open, what processes and services are listening on those ports. And so for that reason, I really, really recommend learning how to use Nmap or ZenMap to scan your server, see what ports are open, and then kind of use that as a starting list, and then trying your best to reduce that attack surface as much as possible. So by far, the strongest way to reduce your attack surface is to use a firewall. Um, and what the firewall does is it blocks connections to particular ports or only allows connections to ports you specify. And I mean, on this one, this is what the scan looks like before I turned on the firewall, and here, this is what it looks like afterwards. It's such a huge reduction in attack surface. Instead of having to worry about all this random stuff, now all I have to worry about is port 3389, which is remote desktop protocol. The thing with firewall is that you really have to strike a balance between usability and security. You can't just block everything, obviously. You have to allow at least the critical services to connect to the internet. And you can also do stuff like block outbound traffic, but it'll make the computer extremely unusable if it can't talk out to the internet. So really the goal with the firewall is to block as much as you can and limit that attack surface as much as possible without causing issues. So I'm going to go back in the server. So, I mean, we ran the scan a few times. I mean, this is what it looks like. It's absolutely terrible. So let's just hop in the server and go to the firewall configuration panel, wf.msc. Okay. The Windows firewall, or I guess, is there any questions before I jump into configuring the firewall?
No.
Cool. So Windows Firewall is kind of annoying in that it has different profiles based on what type of network you're connected to. So, you know that thing sometimes when you connect to a random Wi-Fi, it asks you if it's a like home network or a public network. It's pretty much just for this, as far as I'm aware.
Oh,
So you can have firewall rules that only apply when you're on a public network versus a private network. Um, for our purposes, typically, we're just going to treat them all the same. The one that's active is obviously the most important, but um, it's okay to just have the same settings across all three of them and ignore that setting, unless you're like in a corporate environment. So Windows Firewall has inbound rules and outbound rules. Um, Windows Firewall is stateful, which was a really hard concept for me to understand because Windows Firewall is the only one I worked with, so I was so used to it. Like stateful just felt like the default to me. But basically, what that means is that it will allow connections based on who initiated it, and it keeps track of the entire connection. So, for example, if I make an inbound rule saying, hey, HTTP is allowed inbound, technically, packets are coming from the client, right? My browser is sending packets to the server, and then the server is sending packets back to my client. But Windows Firewall treats that whole stream as one connection created by my client. So all you have to do is make one rule that allows HTTP in. You don't have to make a second rule, an outbound rule. You don't have to make a second outbound rule to allow the packets back out. Windows Firewall keeps track of the entire thing and bases it all entirely on who initiated the connection. Some firewalls don't do that, but Windows Firewall does that and it makes it a lot easier. So Windows Firewall comes with a ton of defaults, although it looks like I've disabled them all. So I will filter by enabled, and so we can see only the enabled rules. So we've got three. Um, the thing is, right now, if we go back to the main page, these green checks mean that all traffic is allowed no matter what. Connections that do not match a rule are allowed, and that's why we're seeing all these things open on the internet. So what I'll do is go ahead and go through all three profiles. Although really, you just need to do the one that's active, which is private profile, and set the default inbound connection state to block. This block all connection setting will drop all traffic to the server. It is the shoot yourself in the foot button. Never press it unless you're like physically at the computer. So I'll switch that to block, and now we can see that it's a red uh, block sign. If we go to nmap and rerun that same scan again, it should look a lot better. Yeah, so only the things that ports are open or that there are rules for exist now. So I could probably talk about Windows Firewall for like hours. It's actually super duper awesome because you can make rules. So I'm making a new inbound rule right now. And actually, yeah, let's delete these and just start fresh. So you can actually make rules that are scoped to particular programs, which is super powerful. Because if I scoped it just to, for example, port 80, like malware could take over port 80 on my computer instead of my web server. But if I scope it to just the web server, then I can be confident that unless they like basically delete the web server and replace it with their own, only the web server is going out on that port. So I'll go to Apache, bin, and httpd.exe is the web server like executable. So real quick, I'll refresh the page. It's spinning, it's not working. But I'll scope it just to Apache. I'll say allow this connection. I don't even have to specify a port. I just say Apache. And now in theory, knock on wood, yeah, now the page loads. I can go ahead and look at the, well, I can't look at anything because it's broken, but the connection works now.
have you done that in a competition that like worked?
Yeah, scoping to just executables. Yeah.
Okay.
It's super convenient too because you don't have to think about what ports a program uses. Like sometimes programs use like 80 ports at once and it's super annoying. For example, right now I've allowed Apache instead of just HTTP, so I can in theory go to the HTTPS site, although it's a self-signed cert. Okay, and then it redirected back to HTTP. But yeah, um, yeah. So even I only made one firewall rule and I didn't even specify a port, but it allows all of what Apache is doing out.
Okay.
And that can be a good thing and a bad thing if your software has extra features you don't exactly want enabled. But yeah. So um, typically in a competition too, you're going to need remote desktop inbound. Remote desktop is like a way of remotely managing a Windows computer. Um, what I like to do for that is use the predefined rule because I can trust this to be as locked down as possible. So I look through the predefined rules and there's a dedicated remote desktop rule. So I always just turn on all of them. And although remote desktop shadow lets you watch someone else's, so maybe I not want that on actually. And then allow the connection. So, I mean, these file rules are beautiful, right? It's just Apache, just RDP. This is as small as my attack surface can get, assuming that Apache is the only service that is required to be on the internet. Super locked down. No one's getting in this. Well, they are if they have a problem with Apache or they have an exploit on Apache or know a password so they can log with RDP. But this is a really good start for limiting that attack surface, especially compared to what it was before, which was like 80 things were open. So that's inbound rules. We can also talk about outbound rules. So, um, right now, still all outbound connections are allowed. So let's just go ahead and block outbound connections. And let's see. Let's see what is enabled. Yeah, not much. Not much. So now that outbound connections are blocked, I can't use the internet anymore. So blocking outbound connections is hard to do because it really limits what the box can do and it can really break stuff. So you definitely want to be careful when doing outbound rules. I think good outbound rules, like a good starting point, is allowing specific remote ports, AIDEN 443 and 53 through on TCP. That's like pretty much the bare minimum you need for the internet to work, I think. Actually, I think you also need um, UDP DNS. Uh, so yeah, 80 is HTTP, 443 is HTTPS, and then 53 is DNS on both UDP and TCP. So now in theory, yeah, I've got internet now. So big wins. And now, I mean, this box is locked down, right? Like, only thing allowed in is Apache and RDP. Only thing allowed out is traffic to DNS ports and web ports. Now, we still have to like think about our threat model here. We're still vulnerable to some attacks, right? If a hacker knows a way to get in through Apache, then they can still get into our system. If they have a password, they can still log in with RDP. And then C2, if the C2, the way these rules work is that they are for remote ports. So as a hacker, all I have to do is have so my malware calls out to something that looks like port 443 or to port 443, and then my traffic will still go through. So probably a better way of doing this is just scoping this rule to Google Chrome only or something like that. And there's a lot more, there's a lot you can do here to really lock down a system. You can also sometimes just say, you know what, screw it. I don't even want internet. Like I don't need it. I've secured this computer enough. I just want to reduce my attack surface as much as possible. I could rant about Windows Firewall for a long time. It's a very, very powerful tool. Um, I think a couple of gotchas with Windows Firewall. One that's extremely funny, kind of, is let's just say I allow curl.exe. There's this check mark that says allow the connection if it is secure. Um, this only allows the connection if it's authenticated using IPsec, which is like some ancient protocol to like encrypt traffic in a corporate network. If you check this box, even though it says secure, this basically means it doesn't work anymore. So you always want to allow the connection, not allow the connection to secure. That just does not work at all. And that's a pretty annoying gotcha with the firewall rules.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, any questions on firewall?
I think you covered it pretty well, honestly.
Awesome. Alrighty.
How do firewalls interact with remote? activation for like backdoors or something to get back into the system. Is there any kind of interaction there?
Did you hear that question?
Yeah, I was asking how firewalls interact with backdoors to get back into the system.
Yep.
Yeah, so for stuff like that, you really have to um so backdoors have to communicate over the internet unless it's like a really annoying backdoor that's just sitting there on a timer running commands or something like that. Typically, in order for me to control your computer, I have to access the internet. And therefore it has to communicate through the firewall with some caveats. But so um there's typically to communicate over the internet, you can do two things. You can either reach out from the hacker machine to the victim machine, or reach out from the victim machine to the hacker machine. So we call those a bind shell and a reverse shell. The bind shell is when there's a backdoor listening on the victim machine and the attacker reaches out and connects to it. And you would block that with strong inbound rules. And then the reverse shell is when the victim machine reaches out to the hacker machine, and that would be blocked by strong outbound rules. So, in theory, and extremely theoretically, if you had perfect firewall rules and only like needed programs could communicate in and out, that would stop 100% of attacker backdoors if the backdoors need to communicate over the network, which most of them do.
Okay.
Um, there are some exceptions to that, though, which is backdoored services or things like web shells, which I'll talk about in a bit. All right. Yeah. So after you reduced your attack surface down to as small as you can, then you want to figure out how to secure what's left. So if I've set up great firewall rules and the only thing accessible to the internet is my web server, I should then figure out how to secure my web server. So I should check its configuration to see if there's anything insecure in it. I should see if it has any vulnerabilities that an attacker could exploit, if there's any patches I need to have, if there are any backdoors in my critical service. And then after that, you can maybe deploy some defense in depth measures. I don't know how many of y'all have done Cyber Patriot, but I think a lot of Cyber Patriot is what I would call defense in depth, like changing random registry entries.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
yeah, that's literally what it is.
I would definitely call that lower priority in a situation like this than just setting up your firewall correctly. Another thing is like while you're locking down your system, if you do something that's super annoying, I will turn it off. I will undo it so I can get back to what I wanted to do as a red teamer. So it's good to always check in on your security controls to make sure they're still there. Especially the firewall. Like if I get on a box and the firewall's making my life hard, I will turn it off. That's almost the first thing I do. So just keep an eye out. Just some other random tips when it comes to blue teaming. Just like in real life, security honestly comes second to service uptime. Sometimes you just have to accept that what you're doing is insecure, but it's what's keeping the service up, and you just got to roll with it. At my day job, we have a problem with people abusing our like text message 2FA. You know how like every website has that.
Yeah.
Um, they're using it to like basically make us lose a ton of money because they're constantly sending text messages. It's super annoying. And multiple times I've gone to the business and I've been said, "Hey, we need to put like CAPTCHA in front of our text message endpoint so people can't just constantly send text messages with bots on the internet, right?" And the business is like, "No, I don't want to do that because that'll make it harder for people to use our website." And it's just like, okay, I guess I have to accept the fact that like security just takes second place to uh, actually keeping the services running. So, um, another thing is that defense in depth can sometimes kind of be overkill or a waste of time. As a red teamer, I'm never like, oh dang, they turned on the DISA stigs or like, those random Cyber Patriot registry entries. Like that usually does not bother me at all. What does bother me is firewall rules. Now some measures like UAC, user account control, which I can show off later, are actually really effective. So some like random like Windows settings, like for security, are actually really impactful, but a lot of them don't do much. And then another random tip is just like when you're going into a blue team competition, just have a clear game plan about what you want to prioritize. you're not going to have enough time to do all the security you want. So make sure you focus on stuff like changing passwords before you try and find every single backdoor on the server. All right. Oh yeah, and also injects, but I hate those, so we're not going to talk about those. Okay. Dealing with red team. All right. So when you're dealing with the red team, it's important to always assume breach. And these competitions, especially ones like Horse Plinko, like the red team is in your system in like 20 different ways. Even though nothing's on fire right now, doesn't mean you're safe. You should definitely assume there's something bad's going on. You definitely want to strike a balance between improving the baseline of security and actually fighting red team. If you just sit there like watching user sessions pop up in Task Manager and logging them out or disconnecting them over and over again, you're not actually like securing the system and you're not fixing the root cause. So red team will just keep on coming back. So you really want to try and ignore the symptoms when you can and instead focus on the root cause. If I'm sending you funny message boxes or something, or like, I don't know, making extra users, you should try and figure out how that's happening instead of just hyperfixating on getting rid of the extra users or, yeah, like kicking out my session over and over again. So how does red team get into systems? By far the most convenient, easiest, and most and just best way for me is default credentials. It's so convenient. I just log in the same way you would, right? So changing your passwords is super duper important. Um, Another way we'll get in is through insecure or misconfigured services. So Telnet, SSH, PHP which is that one web app I was showing earlier. These are services that are meant to be used for system administration, but we'll also use them for hacking. My personal favorite is VNC, which I'll show off later. It's like this really ancient remote desktop sharing protocol that's really great for red team. We'll also get in using backdoors or C2. The thing is C2s and backdoors, C2s being like ways to control a computer, um, have varying degrees of functionality and usability. Sometimes they're really laggy, really annoying. The experience of using them isn't as nice as just logging in. So I'll just try to log in with default creds when I can, and I'll only revert back to those if you do a good job kicking me out or changing your passwords. And then finally is exploits. And this is like the last resort because they are annoying and inconsistent. This is like exploiting a vulnerability in your system. So the most classic one I think is Eternal Blue. I think I demoed it last time. It
Yeah.
like it takes like 5 minutes to run and it can fail and you have to restart the whole thing. And the entire time, like that's what the screenshot is. It's sending stuff like talking about like corrupted eggs and stuff. It makes zero sense and it's annoying as heck. And then once you finally finish running it, the shell you get is super glitchy and bad. So I try not to do that unless I absolutely have to, if someone's doing a great job kicking me out. So malware and C2 and backdoors, typically they have to live on disk in memory and they have to communicate over the network in order to work. So C2 lives on disk in startup locations. So when the computer turns on, it can start itself up. Great places to look for that are great ways to look for that is tools like autoruns, which is a really powerful tool that shows all the startup locations in one place. There's also everything, which is a searching tool for Windows that makes like the default Windows search look so bad. And you can use that to search for suspicious like executable files. Malware also lives in memory, right? It has to be running. So if you just open up something like Process Explorer or Task Manager, you can comb through the running processes and go, huh, I wonder, like, does that look like malware? Does that not look like malware? The thing is, more advanced malware will inject itself into a good looking process to make it seem less suspicious. So, for example, like Explorer.exe, every Windows computer has Explorer.exe running on it. Like good hackers will like inject into that or inject into like control panel or something that like looks benign in order to hide in the process tree. And then finally, like all malware, or if you're trying to use it to control a remote computer, the malware has to communicate over the network. And some great tools for that are TCP Viewer and Resource Monitor. And I mentioned here, sometimes just firewalling off malware is enough to make it just completely useless. So firewall is super powerful. All right, I just yapped a lot. I'm going to go through and kind of show off all those tools I just talked about. Does anyone have any questions before I jump into this? Cool. All right. So I'll start with what malware looks like on disk. So this is autoruns. So autoruns, Process Explorer, and TCP Viewer are all tools from sysinternals, Microsoft sysinternals. Super great resource for Windows. I personally like going to live.sysinternals.com where there's a download link for all of them in the most bare bones site possible. So there's Process Explorer right here. Well, right now we're using autoruns. So
I'm here right now.
yeah, love this website. So opening up autoruns, basically what it does is it shows like registry locations or folders and what is set up to start there. And a lot of it is kind of like learning how to use this tool. Some of it is just learning to recognize like what is a default Windows thing that starts up all the time and what is clearly not Windows. So very first thing in this list is on login, it starts TVN control, which is type VNC server created by Glavsoft. So that's pretty suspicious right there, already off the bat. Scrolling through, um, if an entry is yellow, that means whatever it used to have there got deleted. So it looks kind of suspicious, but it's gone. So I guess that doesn't really matter. I've looked at this page, like this tool, like a million times. So I'm like just kind of glazing past like cmd.exe and 30,000, which, I guess on first glance do look incredibly suspicious, but these are on every single Windows computer. So they're actually not malware, even though it looks really sus. Scrolling through a little bit more, um, there's two, this is the scheduled tasks now, which you can also look at scheduled tasks in the scheduled tasks view, but Autoruns puts it in a single pane of glass for everything. There are two scheduled tasks here, one called Update Windows and one called Windows Update, which look extremely suspicious. Over here on the right, it shows the image path. So it looks like Update Windows is running nc.exe and Windows Update is running sliver.exe. Um, I don't know if everyone knows what these are, but Netcat is a super cool like networking Swiss Army knife that's also extremely convenient for using as a backdoor. And Sliver is a super cool command and control backdoor framework. So both of these are suspicious. I actually made this Netcat one today, and this one is just really old, but I guess I never come up with unique ideas because I named them basically the same thing. Um, but yeah, so both of those are definitely malware. Scrolling down a bit more, we see every service that starts. So Apache, that's the web server that's running on this system. MySQL, that's the database. You would expect to see your scored services here. There's also TVN server, which is the tight VNC server. So not necessarily malware, but it's not something you need. So if this was a competition, I'd definitely be deleting this. And yeah, nothing else really in here that speaks to me. Using this tool is definitely a lot of just kind of gaining experience with it so you know what's safe to ignore. Like, I think I see these three missing files every single time, which is really funny that my Windows just ships with that. But yeah, like I'm just so used to seeing them that I can just safely ignore them and kind of spot what looks weirder. I think orange stuff is highlighted because the publisher is not verified, which is great in this case because Sliver, which is malware, got highlighted, but not Netcat, which is also definitely malware. But anyway, that's autoruns. So that's looking for the malware on disk.
Aiden,
Yes.
I have a question real quick. Is it safe to assume that if we see Netcat in auto runs, that it is more likely than not malware?
Yeah, pretty much 100% it's malware. Yeah. Netcat, like, while it does have good uses, it does not have a reason to turn on startup unless something suspicious is going on. Like 100%. If you see Netcat and auto runs, it's definitely a malware. we can actually go and look at what that looks like in a bit. Actually, yeah, let me just open it up in Task Scheduler to show you what it is. So here we go. I just made a scheduled task called update windows. Sorry, the resolution's really screwed up here, but yeah. So it's a task called update windows. And what Task Scheduler lets you do is schedule tasks to run. I always make it so my malware turns on system startup and then repeats every 5 minutes indefinitely. So if someone ever kills my malware, it just instantly comes back. And what it's doing is running netcat.exe dash nlvp7777 dash e cmd.exe. Netcat backdoor is like the classic. It's just the most classic backdoor ever. What this is saying is listen on port 777, and when someone connects, send them to command prompt. So super easy to connect to. Also with netcat, actually. I'm just netcat 192, the IP address, port 7777. So I run that connection and bam, I'm in. IP config. I'm currently using CMD on the remote computer. Who am I? And the funniest part about Task Scheduler is that you can configure scheduled tasks to run as system. So if I go into the properties, I say when running the task, use the following user account system. So right now I am running as system, which if you don't know is the most privileged user on Windows, which typically you're not supposed to be able to like run something as system. So just very funny. So I have like tons of permissions right now. Like I'm a super duper admin. So yeah, just very classic backdoor, super easy to set up, super easy to use. And Netcat is very versatile. So right now, what I'm doing is a bind shell. So it's listening on port 77 on the victim, and then I connect to the victim from the attacker system. But because it's a bind shell, I can actually block that by turning back on the firewall to block mode, switching the firewall back to block mode. And if I go back to Netcat and try to do something, it's broken because the connection got blocked. So this is an example of using the firewall to stop malware. It's also an example of like, yeah, so this backdoor just got completely shut down by that.
So
So
quick question on the same topic. Is it then also possible to set it up as a reverse shell?
yes, it is. And I'm not gonna remember the command, but I'm gonna try my best. It's like so on the victim machine, now you have to connect out to the attacker machine. So Windows C, Windows System 32, cmd.exe. So I'm still saying connect, and when you connect, -e is .executable, give them command prompt. But now I will send it to the IP address of my attacker machine, which I think is, this is going to be annoying. I've got like 80, this seems right. 192.168.208.1 maybe? Let's see if that's right. And we'll connect out on port, we'll connect out on port 443 actually, why not? So right now I'm trying to connect to my server on port 443. And then here I'll do it in nc-nlvp 443. Okay, looks like that's not the right IP address. I'll try it one more time. But yeah, it's basically the same thing, just in reverse. Let me try with this one, with this IP address. It's been a while since I've done this. That's not the right IP address. Was it 1.108? 1.108, let's try it. So connecting out. Listening really hard on 443. Yeah, nothing. Okay. Oh, I might be blocking it on. Oh, no, I'm in. There we go. So connect from this from unknown. So now this is a reverse shell. I'm in a reverse shell. IP config. Yeah, so I'm back on this IP address. So right now I'm reverse shelled. And because I made my netcat on my attacker machine listen on 443 to this server, it kind of looks like traffic is going from this server to my attacker box like as web traffic because it's reaching out to the server's 443 port. So if I go back and I go to the firewall and I block, or well, let me make sure I Let me make a new rule. Let me make the naive rule again that allows remote port 443. So now if I go back and I block outbound connections and inbound connections, honestly, why not? Like lock down the server. Pretty sure the connection's still gonna work. Yep. Because it's reaching out to port 443. So from the firewall's perspective, I'm reaching out to a website, but it's not a website, it's my C2 server. So reverse shells are tricky and they're actually really hard to shut down. So because blocking outbound is tougher than blocking inbound for sure, I would say. Yeah, no, those are great questions. Okay. So that was looking at on disk. Next, we can look in the process tree. So let's open up Process Explorer. Not sure why I thought that would be in the start menu. There we go. So for those who haven't seen it before, Process Explorer is basically just a better version of Task Manager. It shows it in more of a tree, so you can kind of see like what program is starting what other programs. It also has really powerful search tools. Like I can filter for just .exes. I can filter for, I can search for netcat obviously, but yeah, super powerful. And really, it's just like auto runs. It's something you get better at the more you do it. Like looking at this process tree, because I've done it so many times, I know what's normal and what's not normal. So, and this is just something, yeah, you just get with practice. So, system is always running, always on PID4. SMSS is always there. CRSS is always there. Sliver.exe is not usually there. And what's really weird about this sliver and this netcat are that they're running under an SVC host. SVC host is a really annoying executable that Microsoft uses to bundle multiple services like Windows services together under one executable. It's super convenient for Microsoft because they all share the same memory. It's super inconvenient for someone trying to secure a computer because it makes it impossible to tell what they're all doing. And if I name malware SVC host, it's just going to blend in with all this other stupid SVC hosts out there. Um, so the reason why netcat, sliver, and task host ex.exe are all running under this SVC host is because this SVC host is hosting the task scheduler service, and my netcat malware is running in task scheduler. So here's an example of like how Process Explorer is useful because I can see this relationship of why is cmd.exe running under netcat, running under SVC host. I could then make the connection that, oh, it's a netcat backdoor being hosted by task scheduler. So that's pretty cool. If I go ahead and connect to that netcat shell, is it an up? Thank you. Okay, I think I killed it. I forgot I killed it. But yeah, it's running under SVC host. So can keep on looking. Here's httpd.exe. That's our Apache server that's running. Here's everything, which is that search engine. And here's tvn server, which we've seen a few times. It's the VNC server. There's MySQL, the database. Here's the other netcat.exe, and this is actually another really cool thing about Process Explorer is that it actually shows you what command line arguments are running. So when I mouse over in c.exe, I see that it's running netcat.exe -e cmd.exe, the IP address of the attacker box, and the port of the attacker box. So that's a ton of super useful information I can use to determine, yes, this is 1,000,000 billion% malware, and now I have an IP address I can block because I know it's an attacker IP address. So pretty big there. I'm in the netcat shell right now. I'm going to run ping 1.1.1.1. And if I do that and then switch over, I can actually see that it's running ping.exe underneath the cmd.exe, underneath the netcat.exe. So super duper cool, extremely powerful program. Yeah. Another thing it can do is actually show you what DLLs are running in a process, which if you find a DLL on your server that looks kind of suspicious, you can go to up at the top view. I think it's find handler DLL, and then you can search for the DLL. So I mean, if I just search for that DLL, it'll show all of them, but you can see what executable is running what DLL. So I'll try UX theme.dll. So if I find uxtheme.dll and I think it's sus, I can go, okay, it's running in all of these processes. So in this case, I can be like, okay, this is probably legit because 20 processes are using it. But if only one process is using it and it's a sus DLL and it's a sus process, then I can kind of make the assumption that it's a bad DLL. For those of you who don't know, and honestly, I kind of don't 100% understand what a DLL is, but it's basically the Windows equivalent of a library, like a Python module. So other programs import DLLs and then run the function in the DLL. So it's basically a collection of functions. You can't run it by itself, but other programs can run it. And attackers have multiple ways of forcing a program to run their DLL. So if I have a bad DLL, I can force like a legit program like Google Chrome to run my bad code. So now my bad code is running in Google Chrome and it looks legit in the process tree, but I've actually got malware running in it. So it's very, very sneaky way. It's pretty hard to detect. For malware like that, you really gotta, comb through the process tree, but also hope that you're stopping it at the network level or figuring out how it gets injected by using something like auto runs. So, yeah.
So I have another question for you, about something you said earlier. You said earlier if you named the malware, SVC host or SVC, I think SVC host is what it was.
Yeah.
That it would just blend in with the rest of the traffic. Would it not appear under an actual SVC host like the sliver and NC is?
So that's a good call. So if I ran, that's actually a really good point. So, okay, if I made my SVC host malware run in Task Scheduler, then yes, it would appear under this SVC host like everything else that runs under Task Scheduler. So it would look pretty suspicious because SVC host would be starting SVC host.
Uh-huh.
Um, if I wanted my SVC host to blend in with the other SVC hosts, it needs to have the same parent as them, which is services.exe. So if I was really serious about that, I would have to make it so my SVC host.exe malicious version was a Windows service, so it has the same parent. But then even then, another really great thing about Process Explorer is that it also shows you who signed the executable and the description of the executable. So I think no matter what I do, I won't be able to say Microsoft Corporation on my SVC host. Or I can maybe, make it Microsoft Corporation with a zero or something. So, yeah, it definitely makes it harder for malware to blend in. That's a really good point. Yes, if I use Task Scheduler, SVC host would be the parent of SVC host, and it'd be very obvious.
Okay. Um, can you use Windows Firewall to block the IP address of the attacker?
Yes, you can. So even if you're doing like a more chill outbound filtering strategy, if I go to private profile, um, so the only options for outbound connections are block or allow default. So what allow default actually does is allow all traffic except for those blocked by a rule. So I can make another rule, custom rule. This is an outbound rule. I'll say all programs. I'll say every single protocol, and I'll say which remote IP address does this rule apply to. I'll say these IP addresses, and here I would put in the attacker IP address,
Okay.
and that would block the traffic. Yeah, and you could also do that with inbound rules as well. Depending on the competition, it's actually either not allowed or very frowned upon to block particular IP addresses. And some competitions will make it so red team and the scoreboard come from the same IP, so you can't
What?
just block the red team. Yeah.
Wait, why isn't that, don't they want us to do that? Being too good.
The thing is, it's to prevent cheese where you only allow in the scoreboard's IP address and you block everything else.
Oh yeah, that makes
That's
sense.
not really the spirit of the competition, because then you're not solving the root cause, you're just like saying, okay, well, now you just can't do it.
Yeah, that's not fun.
It's super cheesy. Yeah, I'm glad they block it. Yeah. Or make it so it's not allowed. Or make it so it's impossible by having everything be the same AP.
Um,
For this one.
So moving on to my last
is that
gen.
how it is for CCDC, if you can say that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think it depends on the region and a lot of other things, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that they make it so the IPs are the same. So, which makes our lives easier for sure.
You don't do the, you can't do that.
Yeah, no cheese.
Oh man.
So, all right.
Hmm.
This is the last of the sysinternals tools I wanted to chat about when it comes to threat hunting. And this
Mhm.
is probably my favorite because most malware needs to go out on the internet. This is TCP viewer, and it just shows you every single network connection on your system. Um, so it'll show you the process name, the protocol, what state it's in, what address it's listening on, what port it's listening on, and the remote address and port it's connecting to. So 0.0.0.0 means listening on every address, and most things do. When I'm looking for malware in TCP viewer, I typically either sort by local port, so I can see like basically all the ports from smallest to biggest that I'm listening on, or I will sort by the state, so I can see what's established and what's just listening. So if I check out the established connections, I've got four, and two of them are netcat. And the other, and then one's PowerShell, which I think that's just because. Oh, I know what that is. Okay, that's some other malware I'm running that hasn't showed up anywhere else in the other threat hunting tools. So you can see how the network is a very effective place to catch malware. Um, and there's Sliver. So Sliver is a more chill C2. It only calls out every now and then. So only when you're lucky it'll appear in here. But if you keep watching it, you'll see it. Because it just calls out, I think, every 5 minutes. So we were actually very lucky to see it. Okay. Oops. So if it has a low local port, typically that means that the connection is being listened to on your server. So here, this is local port 4444 and remote port 12711. High ports are typically ephemeral ports. I can't pronounce that word, but they're basically only used for outbound connections and never for inbound. So when I look at this, I can say, okay, at at 12:06 today, some like this connection started on my 444 port. So I've probably got some malware listening on 444 and it's running as PowerShell.exe. So somewhere there's a bad PowerShell.exe on 4444. And actually, I think you can go into process properties and really drill down. Oh, no, you can't. Okay. But now that I know, I can go back into Process Explorer and go, hey, where's my rogue PowerShell process? Um, Here it is. And okay, yeah, you could really tell that that's malware because it looks like that. Um, Properties, command line is PowerShell.exe,
Hey, this
and
is
then all this stuff.
all right.
So that is just disgusting, and you can immediately tell that's malware.
Absolutely.
Um, so yeah,
This is
sometimes
really
just
the best
mousing
rendering
over
interface is
the
having
processes will help you spot what's suspicious and what isn't, because that's very clearly bad to the point where I can't see anything else. Um, So this is one that's listening on my computer and another computer's connecting to. Here we have the reverse netcat shell, and I can tell that because my local port's super high, so it's usually the outbound connection, and the remote port is 443, which is the reverse shell we just set up. So here we have a reverse shell. Here's the netcat bind shell on 7777, which I'm kind of surprised it's not working. Wonder what the deal with that is. Maybe I turned on the firewall and forgot. Anyway, so netcat's listening on 7777 still. Um, there's the reverse netcat shell. Sorry, the order keeps on changing because the state is changing with everything. Yeah. Scrolling down, we can also see some other stuff that's just listening, and it's in listen mode. It's not in established mode. But we have the web server, which is always listening. We have TVN server, which we've seen 50 times. It's the VNC server, which I'll show off later. And then MySQLD, which is the database, the spool service, which is disgusting, but it's listening only on like dot dot, and remote address is also dot dot. So what'll come up in here is a lot of like inter-process communication stuff. So this is just the spool service chatting with other services. It's not actually like listening on the network. So, and then down here we have a lot of remote address star, which is saying I'm listening for anything. Um, Local port 3389. So this is the remote desktop connection. 138 is RPC, I think. So here's where all the like stupid Windows services are living. And yeah, and here on the right you can actually see term service. That's remote desktop terminal service. So 3389. Yeah, cool. So yeah, TCP viewer, super duper powerful. I mean, look, I'm even catching this sliver that's only calling out every like 5 minutes. So, and I can see that this is also a remote, or sorry, a reverse shell because it's calling up from 5177 to port 80. So I had the same idea last time as well to make it a web port because that's like the one thing people let out. So yeah, TCP viewer, super duper powerful. You will catch so much malware with this thing. It's not even funny. The poor man TCP viewer is resource monitor. It's a lot worse and less useful. Um, it's not even finding anything for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it needs some time. There we go. It it's a lot less good. Oh, here we go. TCP connections and listening ports. But sometimes it's all you've got. So I can see all the ports that are listening. I can see http.exe, mysql.exe. SVC host is actually breaking down what it is. There's type BNC. I don't see the netcat, which is probably because it's in TCP connections. And then there's all the netcats, the PowerShell, MySQL. So it's not as good, but this one comes pre-installed with Windows. TCP viewer you have to get from this website. But yeah, both super great tools.
So, Aiden,
Yeah.
I'm going to bother you with yet another question. What exactly is the difference between the listening and established state?
Go back to that same question.
A listening and established state. Yeah, so listening means it's bound, but the connection hasn't occurred yet. And established means the connection is actively happening. So let me open up TCP viewer again. So let's look at some of the example of things that are listening. So the web server, no one is currently making a connection to the web server right now, so it's just listening. Actually, maybe if I refresh this page, it'll switch to established. Yeah, there we go, established. So it's just something that's bound to the port waiting for a connection. So this netcat's established. So I know someone's currently connected to it, which is a reason to freak out because, okay, someone's actively using this malware. Same thing with this PowerShell session. It's established, so someone's actively using this malware. While TVN server, they're both just listening and waiting it for connection, but if I connected to it, it would switch to established. So it's usually good for tracking if a backdoor is actively in use or not. One thing with it, unless I'm wrong, is that reverse shells will always look like established because the connection is coming from this computer and TCP viewer doesn't know what the other side is doing. So as far as TCP viewer is concerned, the connection is ongoing if I go out and reach out, even if the thing I'm reaching out to doesn't respond. So, but it's great for telling if a bind shell, a shell that's listening on your computer, is being used or not. Yeah. Cool. Back to the PowerPoint. It's been a while since we've been there.
It's true, we haven't worked on it for a while.
Oh, yeah. So another thing is basically everything I just said about how to hunt for malware and how to use firewall rules do not apply to web shells or other backdoors of services. So sometimes services natively support the ability to run commands or do bad things, or you can make a service do bad things by backdooring it. My favorite by far is Pony Shell. It's a super awesome and usable web shell. That's a screenshot of it in the top right. But it's not just web shells. Sometimes like random other services have this kind of thing. On the bottom right corner is a kind of famous, like horrible feature of, I think, Microsoft SQL called XP_command shell. It allows you, if you log into a MySQL server, Microsoft SQL server, to run commands. So right there, they're running dir star, and at the bottom, they're getting the output of the command. So even stuff like databases, you can sometimes run commands in. So if your firewall rules are perfect and only allowing in connections to your website, and you're not letting anything out, and you checked Process Explorer, you checked TCP viewer, you checked auto runs, and you see nothing, a web shell still gets past all of that. So back to the demo box. I've got a web shell. I think it's called test.php. There we go. So who am I? I'm running as system, which is really funny that I get more permission than someone actually using the system. Dir ipconfig 178. So this is like a really nice shell, like a super duper nice shell that has like up and down arrows and all this stuff, and it's like color coded. It's super convenient. And I mean, if we went back to the firewall and we blocked everything outbound and only allowed inbound the scored service, it would still work great because it's built into the website, right? Like I'm accessing the scored service. So this is super sneaky, super strong, and it gets past basically everything, right? Like if I go into auto runs, I'm not going to see it. If I go into Process Explorer, TCP view, I won't see it because it's part of the web server, right? It's part of httpd.exe. This is my backdoor. Um,
Running GoBuster on our own website be the way to find something like this? I don't even know if we
yeah,
can do that in competition. Can we do something like that?
I think you could. I think GoBuster, that's actually a great call out. It would probably work. It might be kind of slow slash hard to find because also
Yeah.
what attackers can do is hide the shellcode in a legit file.
Right.
Um, you can actually just look at the files yourself, but if you don't know what the service is, it's hard. It's just hard to find them, honestly. GoBuster is a great idea though, actually. I'd never thought of that before. That could work though.
I'll have to try that out.
Yeah. So for those of you that have never like administered a web server, typically the files on the web page are located in a folder on the computer. It's usually either htdocs on Windows or www on Linux. We're on Windows, so it's in htdocs. So literally every single one of these .php files is like a file that's served on the website. And this one is test.php. So if I look, there's test.php, that's my malware. This time it's kind of easy to see because it is a way different modified date than everything else. But attackers can modify the modified date, and I would do that if I was hacking you. So you can't really use that as a metric.
All right.
So really the way to fight against this is just understand.
Yeah.
Sorry, was there a question or?
No, no. We
Okay,
just
cool. So one caveat is that if I open up Process Explorer and I look at HTTPD and then I run a command that takes a long time over here, I'll actually see that cmd.exe is calling ping.exe with HTTPD as the parent. Only for a bit while the
Oh,
command's running. But if they're running a really long command, like downloading something, that can be enough time for you to notice it. So that's the one time you'll see it in Process Explorer. The real way of figuring it out, though, is
hmm.
logging. So I'm going to try my best to find the logs here. Logs. Apache access log. So if we just go to the access log and I look at the what's like, so this is the web server logs. So every single connection. For those of you who aren't super familiar with websites, it's like get is the verb, and then this is the path in the browser. So if you're a blue teamer, you'll see a lot of like scoring engine traffic, right? But you also see test.php feature shell, that's pretty suspicious, So sometimes by digging around in your web files, you'll see something that isn't like books or the main website, which is slash. You can be pretty sure that that's a web shell. This one's really nice by telling you it's a shell. Not all of them will do that. Um, Sometimes web shells will make it so the way you send the command is in the URL. So sometimes if you're really lucky, you'll see the commands the attacker is running in the log. So yeah, check your logs. There's a lot of cool stuff in there sometimes, especially when you're getting attacked by something like this. So cool.
One quick question about that. If the shell code is in an actual legitimate PHP file, what would it look like in the logs?
Yeah. It depends on how advanced their malware is. So um I'm usually really lazy and I just literally look up like one-liner PHP shell and I just shove this one-liner into legit code. So, and what this is doing is basically, I think this is like the request vars. So, like what this would look like is like the URL and then with like a question mark CMD equals like dir or something like that. So it's super obvious and you would see that in the logs. But if they're a super advanced hacker and like less lazy than me, they'll make it so the way the command is passed to the backdoor is like in the HTTP body instead of in the URL, in which case you would not be able to detect it through the logs. Like it would just look like a normal request to a normal like URL on the website.
If
So
it's
for
in, if it's through the body, do you think using something like Wireshark to like look through it would help or no?
that actually is really smart. It would. Wireshark would actually help if it's HTTP, but if it's HTTPS, it would be encrypted and you would be able to see it. But that is really true. HTTP, like Wireshark would actually help if the backdoor was in HTTP. So that I've never thought about that before, but that's actually a really good point. Um, for me, the
Wait, are we giving you ideas? Wait,
yeah, kinda, yeah,
wait,
actually.
wait.
That's really cool.
We're giving him ammo so he can.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, now I can think of how to counter that. That's really cool, actually.
Yeah, we should build our entire playbook for this guy.
Um, every time I've personally been hacked by a web shell, it was super, super complex, and I never figured out like where it actually was. Um, but I went, okay, I really how I figured out the web shell was hacking me was I thought about my threat model. I went, okay, the only way they could be running commands on my computer right now is if my scored service is backdoored. My scored service is a website. Okay, they're hacking me through the website. And then from there, I knew to look and dig around and try and figure out the web shell. So, but yeah, it's really sneaky and really hard. Wireshark actually would probably pick it up though if it's HTTP. That is a really great call out I did not think about.
So, to follow up on that, if it is a situation like you say, where let's say it's HTTPS, you can't use Wireshark, but you have logically deduced that it is a web shell, and you're looking around through your PHP code or whatever the code of the website is, how would you know? Like,
Yeah,
what would set you up to say, okay, this line is where it is?
yeah. I mean, every or PHP web shells in particular are going to have system. This system function is what runs the command. So I would control F for that, or for other similar functions like that. Um, the logs wouldn't exactly tell me what the shell is, but I would look through the logs and like see like if anything is getting a weird number of requests for what it is, right? Like in this case, even if it didn't have question mark feature equals shell in it, I would still be like, why is test.php getting hit so much when it doesn't seem like as important as some of the other things, like as compared to the front page, right? And it's a lot harder to tell that when there's a bunch of legit traffic coming from the scoreboard. But yeah, um, it's just yeah, you really have to just figure it out by like deducing based on the traffic, like which pages are sus, and then going into them and searching for evidence like the system command being used. So web shells are hard. They're really hard. They're like the final boss, honestly, of backdoors. They're one of them for sure because you can hide them anywhere, and they're super effective. You can't firewall them off. You can't see them in the process tree unless they're running a really long command. Um, there and sometimes like WordPress has like hundreds of PHP files. You can't manually search through all of them. There might be a way with everything actually, which I haven't really talked about, but it's like a super powerful search engine. There might be a way to search inside of files. Maybe not. There might not be a way to search inside of files. Um, but you could search inside of a bunch of files for the system command on Linux. You could definitely do that with grep or something. I'm sure. But yeah, they're just really hard. It's definitely something to like to do some research on, to practice, to test yourself. I think I included a link to Pony Shell. It's like super easy to find, and I think I included it in the presentation. Yeah, so it's just on GitHub. You can download it yourself. Your antivirus will catch it and delete it. So you have to copy the contents of the file off of GitHub. But yeah, they're hard to fight. And there's other versions of them too, right? It's not just web shells. There's also MySQL letting you run commands. There's this horrible mail server that used to show up a lot in competitions. I do not think it shows up anymore, called HMail server. And HMail server, it's a crappy mail server. And there used to be a setting, and there's not going to be a photo of it, where you could have it run a command if a email had a certain thing in it. So I would backdoor HMail server and have it run commands when I sent it an email. Like there's a lot of stuff you can backdoor that way, and it's a lot harder to find. So cool. So just some random red team stuff. My personal preferred C2 methods that I use a lot, from easiest to hardest to set up. Netcat, it's the classic. I mean, I figured out how to do the reverse shell. Like we remembered it on this meeting. Like it's super easy to use, super powerful. You can do reverse and bind shells. It is kind of jank. You can't like tab complete, so it's not as nice as other shells are, but it's just simple, effective, and to the point. Next is tight VNC, which I put C2 in quotation marks up here because it's not really like a command and control framework. It's a legit service used by people, maybe. But to me, it's just like the funniest like command and control thing ever. So what I'm going to do is I've got the VNC server running on this computer. Open up the viewer, type in the IP address, type in the password, and this password is configured by who set up the VNC server, so it's me. So the password to my user on this Windows computer is like, 12 characters and all that stuff, but the VNC password is 123, and I'm connected. And what's great about VNC is that I get control of your screen and your mouse, and I get to watch you do what you're doing. So this is where I have my most fun during competitions. I'm just like literally like watching your screen, seeing what you're up to, wiggling the mouse sometimes. Like I can mess with your files. So like on the right is VNC, on the left is the actual computer. Like I just have pretty much complete control over the computer. Well, over your session. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a legit program. No antivirus is going to flag it as a virus because it's not. I'm sure some psychos still use this to manage their servers, but for me, it's just 100% malware, and that's this tvn server.exe. So, which doesn't look that sus because it's an actual server and it's like made by Glavsoft, which is kind of sus, but like, it's not like malware.exe, but it effectively is for me. So that's VNC. Next up is the Metasploit framework, which I demoed last time as well. It is like the classic bread and butter exploitation and command and control framework. That's what that PowerShell, that horrifying, horrifying PowerShell blob is. Where was that thing? Yeah, this thing is Metasploit framework, so I did not make this myself, obviously. Super powerful, super nice. It looks like my session actually died because of the firewall rules we turned on. So let me see sessions again. Okay, I don't have the session, so that PowerShell is actually not even doing anything right now. But I'll just run it again. So this is actually my favorite way of accessing people's computers when they have the default password on. Show options. So I set the rhosts to who I'm trying to hack. But Meterpreter is awesome. You can set it to a file. So if I actually dir, I have the quals 2026 IP addresses like in a file, and I just point it at that file, right? This is using psexec, which I think they talked about in the Red Team debrief. It's basically one of the 500 ways to run commands on Windows. It does need a password, so that's my super secure password right there, and the username of the person or of the user administrator. And then down here, I can configure a custom payload. So right now I have it Windows Meterpreter bind TCP, but if I wanted to, I could set payload Windows Meterpreter reverse TCP, and that actually has tab completion and everything. And then I can show options on that and make it so it calls out to this IP address on this port. So really, 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 really powerful. I'm going to switch back to bind though. So when I run this exploit in quotation marks is just logging in with that username and password. It connects to the server, it logs in. I see the TCP viewer pops off because I'm connecting to it. And now I'm into the computer. I demoed this last time as well, but Meterpreter has just a billion things you can do, like play audio, watch their webcam, record their microphones. I never use these during competitions because it doesn't work when you're not, because you're all connecting to a remote server, so I don't have your webcam or your microphone. You can watch their screen, you can do a bunch of other stuff. So much power, but what I always do is just type in shell, and then I'm in. Once again, very funny. You are system. It's so easy to become system on Windows if you're just, being malicious, but there's no way to do it if you're not. I think is very funny. Yeah, just very, very effective. It takes a bit to set up and a little bit to work, right? Because you have to understand the all the like custom syntax for it, right? You have to learn how to do show options and then set SMB user to administrator, like stuff like that. You have to learn all that. But once you do, it's super powerful. Lots of stuff you can do. You can run on sessions. So right now I have just one session, but if I set L port to 4.6 or 4.6s instead and run it again, I'll get a second session. I'm going to BG to background that session and type in sessions to view my sessions. I've got 2 sessions. I can actually run dash C net user, and this runs it on every single session. Oh, I have to sessions dash C net user, and that runs it on every single session. It tells me it's the same result because it's the same computer, but super duper effective. But does take some getting used to. And then the last thing in the PowerPoint when it comes to C2 methods is Realm. There's a link to it. I didn't set it up because it's kind of a pain in the butt. It's meant for red teaming at scale for a large organization, so it's not super useful for like just one computer. But when it does work, it works really good. Let me hop into Realm. Like basically it has this super cool interface where like every single host is tagged. So I can just type in Linux and then select all, and I'm selecting in a CCDC competition, that's like 100 hosts, right? So I'm selecting 100 hosts, and then it's got tomes, which are like basically built-in commands I can run. So I can list files, cat a file, download and execute a payload, and then it runs it on all 600 of them. And you can actually sort the output of all those like executions. Yeah, anyway, super powerful, really great. But also a pain in the butt to set up. So if you want to like get into red teaming or to do some red teaming so you can practice your own blue teaming, I would definitely stick with Netcat and Metasploit. Okay. And I think this is the last slide actually. As a red teamer, things to make my day less fun are good firewall rules, just allowing the bare minimum, blocking everything else. It's super hard to do right. You will break dependent services. You will break your own internet. But when you do it right, it's like I'm trying to hack a rock, right? Like if I set up good firewall rules and I try to connect to the server and it's only got one port open and there's no vulnerabilities on that port, I'm cooked. I'm never getting back into that server. So that's how you really lock out red team is good firewall rules. Rotating credentials is also super effective. Red team will say at every competition, the red team debrief will say, hey, you guys should change your passwords because yeah, like default creds work all the time. And it's not just for like your computer, like it's not just changing the Windows password. It's also changing service passwords. Like if you don't change the database password like I did earlier, I'll just log in with the default database password and drop your entire database. So changing passwords is big. And then finally, threat hunting and active defense. Just constantly checking for malware, killing it if you see it, figuring out why, performing root cause analysis to figure out how red team is getting it, and then shutting that down is a big way to make red team have a less fun day. Yeah, and I think that's it for the presentation. I don't know if there are any last questions.
So, oh, you can go for it.
I have these three, so so my first question is, you said that you would often choose port 80 if you wanted to spawn a netcat listening on some port, you would choose port 80 because a lot of times that's allowed by people's firewall rules. But if they do have a web server running and they have a reason to allow that port, then wouldn't the web server already be bound to that port? And if that were the case, would you not be able to spawn another process to bind that port?
Yeah, no, that is a really good point. And yeah, let me clarify it a bit. So you're right, 2 services cannot be running on the same port. But the reason why I like using port 80 is not for bind shells, but for reverse shells. So not opening up port 80 on the victim, but connecting from the victim to port 80 on the attacker. Like in this instance right here, where I'm doing 443 instead of 80. So there's a web server running on this box. Okay, how do I pause it? There we go. So there is a web server running on this box, right? So port 443 is down here, HTTPD on the victim. But what I'm doing is connecting to 443 the remote port is on the attacker. And that's because even if I have super strict outbound filtering, I'm still going to want to connect to remote port 443 because that's the internet, right? If I block remote port 443, I'm blocking my own access to web pages. So that's why I like port 443 and port 80, because people will open that up as a remote port a lot so they can use the internet. And that's why it's super effective for a reverse shell. For a bind shell, you're 100% right. I could not open up a netcat listening on 443 because it's already being used.
Okay, I didn't realize it was the remote port. I got you now. I know. My second question is, just why doesn't tab completion work? Are you saying it works for the bind shells but not for the reverse shells? And if so, what's the difference? I would think that cmd.exe just gets the tab character and does the same thing, but either way.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I kind of just offhandedly mentioned that. So you're right. It tab completion doesn't work for both reverse shells and bind shells with netcat. It depends on how nice your shell is. Unfortunately, hacking, like most like hacking shells are pretty crappy. So for example, if I sessions 2, if I drop back into my interpreter shell, if I try to dir C and then I press tab, I tab. I don't tab complete, I just tab. It's super annoying. I'm trying to think of some other complaints. I can't do the up arrow here. The up arrow doesn't work, it just prints this to the screen instead. Um, so yeah, a lot of hacky shells are like that, and you're right, it is the same for bind shells and reverse shells. Um, Typically, if you're hacking, you just don't get tab complete. So
It's like that like everywhere.
yeah, it's very sad. Some like really nice shells let you have it, but most of the time, no.
I was think there would be a way with netcat or similarly easy to use tools to board all the characters to the executable.
You know, there probably is a maybe not netcat, but Meterpreter, because Meterpreter is pretty fancy. There probably should be a way. Tab completion. Let's see. It's kind of hard to find. Yeah, no, there's nothing good there. Um, you know what? There probably is a way. I just have not figured it out myself. Yeah, it's really annoying that it sends it as a tab instead of tab completing it.
Okay, and then my last question is just about the way that you configured your Metasploit options. Did you just make up the SMB user and password, or did you find those credentials somehow?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So in red team competitions, hackers will crack passwords. So they'll when they get in through an exploit, they will take the hash of the Windows password and use that to figure out the actual password. So I'm getting that password from somewhere else. So yeah, I need to have the legit password of the user to use this particular exploit. Um, so what's super cool about Meterpreter is that it has tons of different exploits. So right here, the exploit I'm using is Windows SMB PSExec, which is just straight up log into the computer. But I mean, the most classic, Eternal Blue. I just search for Eternal Blue and I figure out it's this one. The UI is kind of ugly. It's something you just get used to eventually. So what I do is type in use 19. Now I'm using Eternal Blue. Now I show options, and it still does have SMB user, but this column is required, and the answer is no, because you don't need the username to exploit Eternal Blue. It's entirely unauthed. So if I didn't have a username and password, I would just have to try using a different exploit.
Yeah, that was easy.
So I have a little bit more specific question. I don't know how much you're gonna be able to tell me because I know you're not gonna want to reveal the secret sauce of how you guys actually do these things. But I've noticed in many of the competitions I've competed in recently, it's a very common theme that somehow or other red team just completely nukes Active Directory and DNS. Where do I start looking to figure out how?
Dude, like sometimes it's not even red team doing it, it's just it falling over. Like Active Directory and DNS is such an interconnected like mess. It's super hard. It's super hard to get it working and keep it working. Like what are you seeing? The service doesn't start anymore, or like computers aren't be able to use it anymore? Like there's so many places it
Well,
can
it's
fail.
like how you guys did at Playco, where you guys had different things that would go off at a certain time of the competition. at a certain time in these competitions, eventually, like everything will freeze up and stop working. And then when you restart the computer or whatever, Active Directory DNS is just completely gone and everything.
Yeah. So one of the ways, so if I really wanted to just kill something and make it so you can never bring it back, the classic is to go into regedit.
Uh,
I'm gonna see if I can remember this. Local machine system, current control set, services. Wow, I'm good. I still got the memory. So I go and I find whatever I want to kill. So I think term service. Yeah. So if I wanted to get rid of RDP, I would just go in here, go to term service, and just delete it. Just like straight up. It's gone now. Like you were never starting that service again.
okay.
That's one of the ways. I don't know. Troubleshooting Active Directory is like half of an IT degree by itself. So
Uh-huh. Well, I mean, the way I have around it, quote unquote, right now is I made some stuff to make backups of Active Directory and DNS so that when they take it down, I could just re-upload it.
you
Uh,
know, if
that's
that
what I'm
works, I'm
doing.
impressed.
I mean, it worked on the test environment, but in the competition where I actually wanted to test it, under live fire, they had already completely nuked the Windows firewall, which is one of the dependent services for Active Directory, so it didn't work.
Oh, dang. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's the other thing. Like, for example, if I wanted to completely destroy, like a slightly less mean way of killing services is, I don't
NPS
know.
SBC, I think it is for Windows Firewall.
You said, what was it? WF?
And NPS SBC.
That's crazy. I did not know that. Okay, well, more you know. Yeah. Like I can go and find like depend on services, right? So it depends on these services. I can just edit this to be like ha 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 ha, and now like the service will never start again
That's
unless
so
someone goes and finds that you did this and knows what to set it back to. So
that's so evil.
yeah. So that's another really evil way of messing with the services. I think that one you can kind of tell what's going on if you go into services.msc, which is where I'm assuming you look at your services and
Yeah.
Windows Firewall properties. Dependencies is like completely broken right now because I filled it with a bunch of garbage. So
Oh.
another thing you can do is change the bin path. Like I can make it so the path. I think I've talked to you about this before. Maybe you can
Yeah, I
change this
think
to
so.
LMAO, and then it's just like okay, it's not running anymore. So yeah,
I think they did that a lot in Horse.go. They just
yeah,
changed file and paths and just
that's
name.
something they would do for sure.
Yeah. Um, my question is, we did a competition one time and Windows Defender Firewall was gone. So,
Yeah, that's kind of just not.
um,
Yeah, they just straight up just nuked it off the start.
so is there a way to get that back?
Like WMF.MSC like this.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure
like
that was just
the
gone.
service behind it, you couldn't open this GUI, like it was just gone. You could not do anything with it.
Dude, at that point, I would like find a random firewall off Google and download that instead. Like,
Oh, what? Wait,
if they,
is there no like link to get the Windows Defender Firewall back, I guess quickly? No? There's
I
just
don't know. Like, it's not like you can download it, right? I mean, I've never tried download Windows Firewall. I just I feel like they don't.
oh,
Maybe you can. Maybe I'm
Like,
wrong.
there's
Maybe
no
you can
oh,
just
I
way.
straight
mean
up download it.
it might be there. You might
There's
have to
no
do
way.
that.
Oh, this is a guide. Yeah. I think at that point I would just download an alternative firewall.
Yeah, like the only
Um,
way to get it back that I
Oh.
can think of is you back up the registry and then just like restore it.
So we gotta
But
back
you
up the
would have to back up the
firewall.
registry first, yeah. So if it's gone from the beginning, you're good.
backing up the registry is not a bad idea. It's
What do
actually a
we
pretty good
Now I'm just
idea.
giving him another idea of what the story
The
all
thing
right. See, this
is,
is what you can't see.
um, registry does have a lot of startup locations, so the only problem I could foresee with that is you threat hunt, you kill all the persistence, you back up, or the registry got backed up a while ago, you restore the registry, all the persistence
All of
comes
this
back.
back, yeah.
But apart from that, that's a pretty smart idea, especially if people are being really rude and deleting your registry entries like I just did. So
Okay.
another thing, which is like a meme, is SFC/scan now.
Yeah.
It'll repair Windows. I don't know. Like one time it worked for me, so now I use it all the
I don't
time,
think
even
it's
though it's
ever
never worked
worked.
since then.
Have
Yeah, I
you
don't think
tried?
it's
Have you
ever
tried
worked
it
for
in
me.
competition?
I have. I don't
Did you
think it's
try
ever
it the
worked.
time that we lost firewall? Oh shit.
I don't think this has ever worked.
This is the thing that's
This is-
something that's like
this is just like-
ever whatever it is just doesn't work.
This is that like YouTube tip you get that may work
I would do this.
5% chance it works.
It's like the YouTube shorts, it's like, oh, here's how you can get so much more performance out of your PC.
Yes, and the comments are like, "Oh my God, it works," but like, don't even know what happened. They don't know what's going on. Okay, what? Damn.
Yeah, so to give you another idea to go back to what I was talking about initially with Active Directory, about what happens when they, kill everything, is, like obviously Active Directory is gone and DNS is gone. Your internet connection stops working entirely. It just does not work. It's
Dude,
yeah, it's kind of cooked.
yeah, I have no idea what that is, but that's just straight up evil. Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, that happens. That has happened. We did 3 of the WRCCDC invitationals prior to CCDC, and that happened in every single one without fail.
Hmm, interesting. Um, are you doing firewall rules when that happens, out of curiosity?
Yes,
Like inbound and outbound, or just
yes.
inbound? Yes, okay. One thing that I've run into is if a computer is running on AWS, it has an AWS service. And if that AWS service does not call out to like the AWS management stuff every like 15 minutes, it'll completely nuke the computer like from the internet, from the network. So I'm not saying it's your fault. I don't know if WRCCDC happens in AWS.
It's hosted in on Proxmox, so I
Okay,
don't.
okay, it could be something related to that as well. I don't know. Um, I don't know. I'm just like guessing here. Unless if the internet's
No, I
dying, that
mean,
seems like a bigger issue than
Red Team has mentioned that they are the ones doing it. So
okay, okay. Yeah, I don't know. Outbound firewall rules are sometimes pretty risky, but yeah, I know it's probably red team. I have no idea what they're doing, but that sounds just straight up evil, honestly.
yeah,
They're
it's like
evil.
a lot
That
of
region's
times
evil.
I've seen them do it where they completely just get rid of the service entirely. Like they just delete the Active Directory service and stuff, like entirely.
Yeah, they do not want you fixing that. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And
Uh,
yeah, it's pretty strange. I don't really know. I want to know how they're doing it so that I can look into it, but I just don't even know where to start looking for that because Windows has so much stuff to look through.
Yeah. Active Directory is a rat's nest. Yeah.
um, I have a question. Do you have any like us? So we talked all about Windows stuff today. Just a quick like tool. You showed off TPC viewer. Is TCP dump just as good on like a Linux machine? Or would I have to go for like Wireshark if I want to do some act like network analysis
I
on
think TCP dump is just as good. I think it's just the GUI isn't as pretty. But if
okay.
you can get over that, then yeah, I think that's probably pretty good.
Okay. Mm, other than that, um, I guess we can do some more like general questions. You work at Walmart, right? As I guess like red teaming? I forget.
No, I work at Abbott
Okay, Avid,
Labs.
my fault. Hold on.
Yeah. I actually do web like blue teaming for my day job, but this is just my hobby.
Mhm.
I thought you worked at IBM.
Yo, we did not. We don't know where you work.
That's really
I
funny.
thought it was Walmart.
One of the big important CCDC guys works at Walmart. I can't remember his name now, but
Okay.
I think I know who you're thinking of.
Mhm. Um, how was that job, and how has I guess CCDC helped you perform in that job? Has just doing these like red team competitions as like a hobby, has it helped you in your blue team job? That's my
It's
question.
helped a ton, yeah. I mean, I'd say the biggest like thing for me with CCDC was like just learning basic security concepts, like like what a web server is, what's it doing, what misconfigurations could be there, how does DNS work, like very basic IT stuff.
Mhm.
And then other like higher level stuff like what is a threat model, like how do you approach securing something.
Mhm.
Um, the red team side of things like does help sometimes as well, especially when it comes to web stuff. But I mean, like the weird Windows low level things, like I'm pretty much only used for CCDC at this point.
Okay,
Which I'm not complaining. I'm glad that I don't do Windows for my day job, but you know, yeah.
that's good. That's good. Does anyone have any questions about what Aiden does as a job and like they want to get like know what more about it?
I'm a people manager now, so I don't even do that many cool technical things. I work at tickets a
Oh,
lot, so
oh,
that's what'll happen to you if you're not careful.
isn't that what you want?
Kinda, yeah, but you know, sometimes I miss. I mean, that's why I still do this as a hobby because I miss the hacking and technical work.
You're keeping yourself sharp.
Yeah.
Okay. Hmm? Ooh, yeah. No, it's not gonna. All right. Any other questions? No. Okay. Um. Yeah. This is a great presentation. I learned a lot. Learned a lot.
Awesome. I'm glad you liked it.
Mhm. Um. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, of course. And feel free to DM me on Discord if you got any other questions afterwards. I really appreciate y'all giving me the opportunity. I love talking about this stuff. I could rant about Windows Firewall for hours. So, yeah. Hope you guys have a great day. And I hope you guys do great at your next set of competitions.
I
And I
think we're
hope I
gonna do a
see you
lot
guys at
better.
Plinko.
We'll definitely be at Plinko.
Yeah,
Heck
I'll
yeah.
definitely see you at Plinko again.
We'll definitely be at Plinko.
That's exciting. Awesome.
Jake, what's Plinko for?
Dude, Plinko is fire.
It is fine.
It is. Okay. Wait. I was Aiden gone? Okay, it's still
No, I'm
here.
here.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Do you mind sending your LinkedIn so we can post it on our LinkedIn chat so people can connect with you?
I actually really don't use my LinkedIn at all. I think it still
Oh,
says I work at an IT job, but I can send it if you want.
dude. Okay, well, yeah, just send it, I guess. That doesn't matter.
Cool. Alrighty, y'all.
And
Thanks for having me.
all right. Peace out, Aiden.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You learned a lot.
All right, bye.
Peace. Oh, okay.
You leave?
Yeah, you left.